Hey folks, this is Jack Stoll of Jack Stoll Performance, and I wanted to do a short video on my car and kind of go over some of the modifications that I've done to it. Um, this is a M20 B27 bottom end, like an ETA bottom with a 885 cylinder head. These are Chevy like truck ignition coils, and actually turned off these standoffs and welded them to the valve cover. Made the valve cover, made these overlay harnesses to run the ignition coils. I also rewired the injector box here, the plug box, and run the injectors fully sequentially as well. I made this plate here at the front of the engine. It has to have a camshaft position sensor in order to run sequentially. I modified the cooling system. I cut up the stock thermostat housing, use an inline thermostat in the upper hose. That all works out really well. This is basically an E36 radiator, kind of a large, cheap E36 radiator. The front of the car was badly damaged on track, and so I basically cut off the whole front of the car forward of the strut towers here. So it's like a tube front end with the full bash bar. I have a pretty good size intercooler in there. I don't remember the dimensions, but it's one of the bigger ones that I could fit in there basically. I have a stock engine oil cooler, which I mounted up high here in the front to keep it away from potential track damage. So I'm using in the beginning some of the stock tubing that was used, and welded on these 10 AN fittings here so that I could go to 10 AN. That runs down to the stock oil filter housing. Basically, I did modify it a little bit, like welded a fitting onto it, and used a bolt-on fitting on the other port. And then on the oil pan, the oil drain also is like a bolt-in fitting that goes to 10 AN. Never have any trouble with it leaking or anything like that. I'm very happy with it. And then the oil feed line for the turbo, because I have a lathe, I could machine the washer, to get it to index properly, to get the line to point where I want it to point. So I like the way that stuff's all laid out. I make these little standoffs with zip ties to hold the line on. So I'm very happy with the way all this stuff is laid out here. It's great. This is a Chinese GTX 3076R ball bearing turbo with a billet wheel. I run about 22 psi of boost. This is the external wastegate, of course. I welded the wastegate tube directly to the turbine housing, which gives me excellent wastegate priority. So it can switch easily between increasing turbine speed and decreasing turbine speed, and vent back into the exhaust very easily. The exhaust has been on here several years. It's not cracking or having any problems. Certainly not the most beautiful exhaust ever, mostly built out of scrap stuff. A lot of this car is sort of like a combination of eBay stuff, some decent stuff, and a lot of stuff that I just built by hand. The strut bar, I cut these plates on my CNC plasma table and bent them, and then bent this piece of tubing, made the strut bar, made this plate here to keep water out of my air filter because the tire is right there, so I didn't want it slinging water on. So this plate is bolted to the tubing here of the tube front end, and then again at the top here, so it's held in place quite well. I'm running SLR angle. It is the budget angle kit with the with E36 arms and the SLR weld-on extensions, which I'm pretty happy with. Running BC Racing coilovers, which I love. I think they're amazing. They've been on here a long time and like totally trouble-free. The rear of the car, I have basically cut and re-welded the the trailing arm pickup points to achieve a 1/4 inch of toe in and 1/2 a degree negative camber. I do that. I take the subframe and I take a measurement by putting a rod through the stock pickup points. And then, if I want to take a 1.5 degrees of camber out, I just, using a digital level, take that measurement, place the rod where I want it, and make, tabs and locate it precisely where I want it, and then weld shut the stock pickup points, and that's worked out really well for me. I've not had any trouble with that. This is a spare subframe that I put together. The one that's in the car, I made some big reinforcement plates that actually take up a bunch of this area from 3/16 plate. The subframe that's in the car had some damage, like the bolts had come loose on the diff and there was like a crack here, and one of the holes was like wallered out. So I made big washers that I welded on here, and on the bottom side of the subframe, they're known sometimes in a good hit, because this is the smallest diameter of the subframe to bend in this area. So I made these 3/16 plate steel reinforcement plates that I welded on either side. This one's not painted or anything, it's just put together to use if I bend mine or if I want to sell it to somebody else. And then the trailing arms, I do a lot of reinforcement on the trailing arms as well. This is a pair that came off of my car. They're not bent, but they're unfinished. Initially, I had put these on like in the car to help if the wheel got hit, so that it wouldn't change the toe. And then I CAD and cut these triangular braces that I welded on here. And I used the spring plate to help basically reinforce the top of this, to help in the camber axis. So if it gets hit this way, this gives a little bit more stiffness to it. And the small diameter of the BC spring basically fits right in here. I might actually have to grind this down a little bit. And then, of course, using all polyurethane bushings and all that stuff. And the ones that are on my car, I actually put a big piece of 1-inch tubing between here as well, like 120 wall 1-inch tubing between here and this brace as well. The ones on my car is 1-inch tubing, and I think it's going to here instead of down this low, but this works out pretty well as it is. So I think that's about it. I'm sure there's more that I could go over on the car. It's running an ECU Master EMU Classic, which I've been very happy with. It's the old version with the metal box. It's like their most basic one. I was on Mega Squirt before, and I'm very happy with it. At 22 PSI with that turbo and a cam and the displacement, it's like a B27 with an 885 head. I'm probably around 475 brake to 500 brake horsepower, like somewhere in that neighborhood, but I need to get it on the dyno. It's on E85 so that I can run fairly aggressive ignition timing and not really worry about it. The car is very consistent. It does not break often. Yeah, I guess that's about it. I wish you all the best. I hope you have a great day.